Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode. The following episode is going to be a sneak peek at one of our Instagram lives for my subscribers only. My subscriber only Instagram has a book club, and each month we read different books. And then at the end of the month, we do an Instagram live where we review them, we chat, we ask questions, and get to examine that book a little further together. So I decided to share with you January's book club. If you are interested in joining us in our monthly book club, February's book was Essentialism, which is such an amazing book. If you want to get our list of books and then join us on our monthly calls, head over to Instagram. Again, it's our subscriber only. It's a really low investment. I think it's like $7 or something like that a month. And you can get more behind the scenes. You get a little bit more exclusive access to me and my content that I give specifically for subscribers. And again, we do lives that are just for our subscribers. So if this is something you're interested in, head over to Instagram at BeYoungDesign and join us there. And in the meantime, enjoy this book club review on Atomic Habits. I highly recommend it. Enjoy. So this month, book club, our inaugural book club book was Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I saw a couple of you. I saw Denise posted a photo that they were reading it and loved it. And I'm so excited to hear all of your thoughts. I first read this book, I think back in 2022, beginning of the year. And it was huge for me. I loved it so much. It was nice revisiting it. I took down a bunch of notes and takeaways and stuff that I wanted to dive into, and I'm excited to do so. So how I'm going to lay this out is essentially I'm going to just summarize the book a little bit. So if you haven't read it yet, this may be a good teaser. It's going to be a summary essentially. But if you haven't read it yet, I still recommend going and reading it because obviously I'm just going to scratch the surface, but there's such good insight in there. And what I've found is that I used to have this app where it would give me the summary of books. It was great. And it was amazing being able to consume like 15 books information in a week. But I learned that I wasn't able to retain the information as well. So this is a great start, but I do still recommend going and reading the book. So I am going to be referencing some of my notes that I took here. So if I'm not looking at the screen, that's why. So yeah, I'm going to go through just like an overview, quick overview, some of my key takeaways. And I definitely want to hear some of your key takeaways. I'm sure some will be similar, but I have a couple quotes that stood out for me. And I want to know if there were any quotes that stood out for you. And then leave it open for discussion. So I have a couple questions that I created and that a couple people, Katerina sent me a question she wanted to pose to the group. And then we can leave it open for Q&A. Again, if it's a small group or if it's just me today, that's cool too. We can continue the Q&A in the comments. And then I'll leave it off by just a little preview of next month's book, which I can't believe we're already at the end of the month. Also, before I start, I want to say it was really nice starting the month with this because as we get to the end of the month, it's so easy to push away certain habits that we started off in the beginning of the year or the end of December. So I have some really big habits that I implemented/changed in my life that I don't talk about. I also have a puppy here, so if you hear barking, that's her. She likes to run and chase the cat. So I'll tell you a little bit about those habits that I've shifted and how I was able to do that. And it's really exciting to be at the end of the month and still have that going and continuing. So I want to hear what habits you have created. And if there's anything that maybe you started at the beginning of the year and you haven't stuck to, and maybe if you can pinpoint why that is. And then also if there is habits that you started at the beginning of the year and you have stuck to, if you have still continued. So let's dive into it, shall we? And if at any point you have any questions, throw them in the comments. We can dive into it. It's meant to be a conversation. Okay, so Atomic Habits by James Clear. I hope everyone got a chance to at least get started on it. I know so many of us are busy, but that's why I love audiobooks. I'm also an auditory learner, so it's helpful for me to read books. But reading books and consuming information is just like has been a game changer in my life. I always feel like, what do you call it, superhero? Because I'm gaining all this information. I'm like, do people know that this is like free information out there, or information you can get for literally like $10? Anyways, okay. So essentially, this book is a guide to how to better your life, how to create habits. And the whole focus, though, is about these micro habits, these small incremental improvements that you can make in your life that end up compounding over time, which end up making incredible changes in your life. Think of it like compound interest. And he really emphasizes that big goals aren't about the big actions. Action is so important, but it's the day to day, the little actions that you make consistently over time that end up providing you with the results. And that is such a big thing because we so often have big goals that we think that we need to make that like one action, that one big action that's going to turn into something. Or we feel like if we didn't make that one big action, then all of a sudden our whole thing is poo-pooed. And I'm going to go into a little bit of my key takeaways afterwards, but I want to go through just the framework essentially that he outlines. He has these four primary laws of habit formation. How do you basically create a habit? So his book is just as much about creating habits as breaking habits. It's more about like creating positive habits. So the way I like to think about it, instead of breaking bad habits, I like to think of it as creating good habits, because our brain then isn't focusing on what we don't want, it's focusing on what we do want. And I love that he goes through these four key points that are based on creating the habits versus just breaking them. So the first one is making it obvious, making the habit obvious. And one thing he talks about are cues. So he says focus on cue awareness in order to recognize that habits you already have and the ones that you want to develop. So basically, a cue would be, for example, when I see my coffee cup in the morning, the coffee cup is my cue that my brain says, I want coffee. Or literally, as because I've made coffee my first step in my day, that's waking up can be my cue. So I wake up. Oh, I just automatically walk to the coffee maker. So the key part about that is that you can start training your brain to utilize certain cues to help you. Now, say you have a bad habit and there's a certain cue that like say a wine glass or 5 o'clock, and that just automatically means reach for the wine, which used to be me, which I'll tell you about. There's ways that you can change that cue to mean something else. So instead of that cue, hey, 5 o'clock, I'm going to go relax and have a glass of wine, I'm going to switch that and I'm going to start to that cue, 5 o'clock. Okay, I'm going to pour myself a glass of kombucha or something like that, so that that cue ends up becoming part of the habit. Now, let's see what else I had on here that involves strategies. Oh yeah, habit stacking. I have a little bit of like my key takeaways, but yeah, habit stacking is amazing. It's basically when X happens, I will do Y. I used to use this for working out. So when I wake up and I get dressed, I will put on my workout clothes so that I will go work out. Then this is the key too, because then it got to a point where I'm like, okay, now I'm just in comfy clothes all day. But I wanted to feel good. So I said, that means when I am done working out, I'm going to now change into my like day clothes that feel good, like jeans. And I'm a type of person that does walk around my house in jeans. I know some people think that's insane. I do it because it makes me feel good. Like I feel better about things. Like right now I'm in this oversized sweater and it's like this comfy casual look that I actually am enjoying today. But anyway, so what I would do is after I'm done working out, I change. So if it's the end of the day and I'm still in my workout clothes, that tells me I didn't actually work out. I just got in my comfies. So, anyways, those kind of a habit stack, like wake up, put on the clothes trigger me to then work out. Then if I don't change into regular clothes, that triggers my brain to remind me to make it aware that I didn't actually do what I said I was going to do. Okay, the second principle is making it attractive. Again, like how I was mentioning, telling your brain not to do something, like telling your brain that you want to break a habit, it's this negative energy and it's a focus on negativity. So your brain just is, you don't want to focus on the negative essentially. So, how can we make our habits attractive to make us want to do it? You know, if you want to eat ice cream after dinner because it's so tasty, well, that's like, attractive. But how do we in turn make a habit that we actually want attractive? So, the more attractive an activity is, the more likely it is to become a habit. That's why find a workout, say working out is one of your habits you want to keep up, then turn that into an activity you actually like. Don't choose a workout or an activity that you hate because you're not gonna stay consistent. Like my husband, he loves to mountain bike. He stays consistent. I love yoga and I love walking on the treadmill. And I like different type of workouts than him. He's more extreme sports. And all the time he's like, you just got to get out on the trail, get mountain biking. And I'm like, it's not something I would stay consistent with. So we all have different ways to have it be attractive. So find what you like. Maybe it's team sports. And of course, I'm talking about, oh my gosh, the dog is chasing the cat, cat's chasing the dog. We have a German Shepherd Husky mix. She's basically a white German Shepherd. So she's a puppy, but she's giant and she likes to chase my cat. Okay, so in the book, he talks about techniques like temptation bundling, where you actually pair an action you want to do with an action that you need to do. So, for example, like brushing your teeth. So if there's certain things that you need to do, maybe it's like affirmations or something. And if you're brushing your teeth, then you can connect those two. The third thing's making it easy. So simplify habits to make it easy to adopt them, to keep them going on. So again, his whole focus is little incremental things, not an overwhelming big change, big picture. So what this does is this helps reduce any friction or anything that's holding you back for good habits. And if you're making it easy, like for bad habits, like say keeping wine on the counter, I'm using wine because that's going to be my habit that I'm telling you I broke, which is amazing. But yeah, like if you keep wine on the counter, it's a really easy habit to continue. And the concept of he has a 2-minute rule. I love this because there's so many studies that talk about our cravings. And he talks about the 2-minute rule, which is scaling down new habits to just 2 minutes. So I like it for two different things. One, he says like this is such a key part is that if you scale down a new habit to just 2 minutes, it's easier to stay consistent with, and it's easier for your brain to not put it aside. Now, I also like to think of this as the 2-minute habit. If you're craving something for 2 minutes, put it aside. And then after that 2 minutes, you're likely the craving's gone or you've thought about something else. Okay. And then the fourth principle is make it satisfying. So, we have this, it's attractive, it's obvious, it's easy. Well, now make it feel good, like make it awesome. And we can do that in so many different ways. Reinforcing the habits are key to keeping it. So that can be stuff like having a reward system or celebrating. He talks about immediate rewards to make good habits feel enjoyable, and then implementing tracking systems to keep you on track so that you can see the progress. Because again, when we're just focusing on a 1% or a little, it can be easy to not see the progress. And I have a big takeaway from that I'm going to go into. So that is essentially like his core message. It's basically these small changes that you can implement consistently. And if you do that consistently, it eventually leads to significant growth, both in like professional life, in your personal life, health, happiness, all that amazing stuff. So I want to talk about a couple key takeaways. I kind of went into them a little bit. These are just like bullet points I wrote down as I was going through it. The first one is start easy and start with what you know. So back to the making it easy. Just start with what you already know to make it easy. So like again, say it's cooking and you want to start cooking healthier meals. Don't try to then create some like super elaborate recipe that you didn't know. Start with what you know, but just tweak it to see if you can make it a little bit healthier. It's just a little, and then as you get more comfortable as you go, then you can start bringing in new recipes, developing it further, right? If anyone has any good metaphors as I'm going through any of this, comment it so that we can all learn from it. Let's see, my next bullet point I said was as you're more successful and celebrate little wins, you're more willing to do harder things. I love this because success breeds confidence. And once you start feeling confident about your habits or about your wins, you start doing harder things. I love that. Oh, this is a different quote, but I wrote down this quote that's in it from Warren Buffett that he mentions that knowledge builds up like compound interest. Oh, I mentioned that here. I love that because knowledge and habits build up like compound interest. But here's the thing that we all have to remember. Negative thoughts and negative habits also compound. So this is why it can be something as like, okay, you're working out often and it doesn't feel like anything is happening. Or say you are eating not so great, but not terribly, but just not good. And it doesn't really feel like there's a whole lot of change. But then a year later, you look back at photos and you're like, oh, whoops, what happened here? So this is also why success does not happen overnight. Online, it's really easy to see people and think success happens overnight, but there's so much compounded underneath that got them to where they are. He used this example of the bamboo example. So basically, habits feel ineffective until all of the sudden the results show up. He mentions the plateau of latent potential. So it's like the bamboo where it doesn't really look like it's growing at all, but then all of a sudden it shoots up and it's huge. But this is also why it's really easy to get rid of good habits. And this is also why a lot of like fitness people recommend taking progress photos, because even if you are on a super fit routine and you've lost 20 pounds, you're with you every day. It's probably not super obvious to you, those changes that are happening every day. So progress photos, tracking, like he said, something to measure that progress. And this is something I can totally relate to because I have hit a lot of wonderful goals in my career, and it feels sometimes like it's really slow or that the results aren't there. But the thing is that when I look back at where I was, 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 6 years, it's so obvious. So what I do is I try to sit down. I try to do it quarterly just to reflect and to, be proud. I know a lot of us do it at the end of the year. That's a great way to do it too, because we have to look back to see our successes and our wins and celebrate those, and then also see what our lessons are, even our positive lessons. What are the lessons I learned from certain successes? And then what are lessons I learned from things that I did not enjoy? So it's really easy to get rid of those good habits. And then a quote I wrote down is mastery requires patience. There's another book. I don't have it on our book list this year because I just found out about it, but I'm going to read it. So I might just start like a bonus book club list. So if anyone wants to keep up with different ones, but there's a book called Mastery and I really want to read it. But anyways, mastery requires patience. Couple other notes I wrote is forget about goals, focus on systems instead. So the systems to help you stay consistent, systems like setting out your tennis shoes to go for a run or putting together your outfit or even setting up good food in your house. Some other key takeaways, the only way to win is to get better each day. The score takes care of itself. So I like this because just work on being better each day. Don't worry about taking score every day. I mean, yes, we want to look at the progress and everything, but just work on being better. Like wake up and say, how can I improve? How can this be my best day? And guys, I'm no saint. This is something I'm like talking to you as much as I'm talking to myself. And I love doing this. I'm so glad to have started this book club because it's helping me stay accountable and it's helping remind me too of all these different items. Let's see. I talked about a little bit about habit stacking, slow and steady, 1% strategy gets you closer to the goal. And then I wrote down the couple steps, 3 steps is one, stop judging yourself. Because, like I said earlier with the bamboo example, it's slow progress that sometimes you can't see. So don't judge yourself because when we start to judge ourselves, it's really easy to just drop the habit. Take your aspirations and break them into tiny behaviors. So, micro. I love taking things from a macro level to a micro level with habits, with goals, with literally everything, because macro level can be overwhelming and put us in procrastination mode. Micro level can actually set us into action. And then number 3 is accept mistakes as discoveries and use them to move forward. What lessons can we learn from them? So the last quote that I saved that I wanted to share, which I love, is that there has to be some form of discomfort in learning for the brain to really grow. If it's uncomfortable, it's a good thing. So much of what this is about, I teach inside Mind Over ARE because so much of this is applicable to the architecture exams, to business, to everything. And knowing that growing and learning is uncomfortable because our brain is doing something new is something to celebrate. And if we're never doing something new, our brains are going to get bored. We're a very intelligent species and we're meant to be constantly learning. So when we're trying out a new habit, if it's uncomfortable at first, know that it will get easier. Actually, I just saw a video about this guy who moved to a snowy area. He's originally from Southern California, moved to a snowy area, and he was driving and he's got like his 4-wheel, is that what it's called? Truck. And he's still like driving all slow. It's starting to snow. And the people who have lived there probably all their life are like whipping around in their little sedans and no big deal. And he was talking about that. Like he knows that as he gets comfortable with it, one day it's going to be no big deal. But in the beginning, when you're learning something new, you're figuring it out. Sometimes it can feel scary, slow, overwhelming, a lot of brain power. But then eventually, once you practice it, you make it a habit, then it just becomes like any other day. And in business, in careers, in life, we're always doing that. And I personally strive to always have something that's pushing me forward. I don't know if it's because I like to be in a constant state of stress. That's something I'm working on to figure out. But I also love it because then I'm always growing and having amazing new things. So the 3 questions. The first one is, which habit are you trying to change? And how are you applying the book's principles? That actually goes hand in hand. So I'm just going to combine these actually, because that one is very similar to Katerina's, is what one habit is everyone going to implement to get that additional 1% progress? So I love that. I'm going to say 2 things. One is the habit of I'm trying to think of like how I present this. So I used to drink wine all the time. I love wine. And it just became like a nightly ritual, not in any sort of abusive way, just in a way that my focus in 2024 is about health. And it just wasn't serving me anymore. And I've been drinking since I was probably 13. So this is a lot of, this is Bryn spills her secrets. So I thought about it in December and I'm like, this just isn't really serving me anymore. I want to focus on health. I just want to feel good. Again, it wasn't like I was getting drunk or I was passing out or anything like that. It just was a habit that I just like to say it just wasn't serving me. And so what I started doing, well, first of all, I actually still had wine. I had a couple bottles, but I just put it in the garage. And I decided in the evening, it's usually like when I'm cooking and stuff, I decided that I'm just going to switch to kombucha and put it in a wine glass. And so it still feels good. And that small change made such a difference because it was just having something tasty to drink. It still was like the same habit in a way, but I was just replacing what I was drinking. And it's been amazing. And the other thing that I did, which honestly I believe helped the most, and it's not something as talked about in this book. But it is something I talk a lot about in Mind Over ARE. But it's even though it's not about this book, it's still habits. And I just wanted to bring it up because it really did make a difference. Is I changed what I was telling myself every day. So I started waking up and saying, I look great and I feel great. I look great and I feel great. And not that I ever really cared about, oh, I have to look great. But I realized that a lot of times I would push that so far away that I wouldn't prioritize my health. And that goes into a whole lot that we don't need to go into here. But I started just saying, I feel great, which means I look great because I feel great. And whatever's going on the inside is presenting itself on the outside. So when I was drinking and I was waking up like a little tired or just like, and again, I wasn't waking up hungover, but I just was waking up not feeling just totally clear. But I was telling myself I look great and I feel great. But that was in opposition of what reality was. And so my brain was like, wait a second, you're saying you look great and you feel great, but you're also looking in the mirror or waking up and not necessarily feeling that way. And so I just, no matter what, I look great, feel. So then I started noticing that I was making shifts to start aligning my reality with what I was telling myself. The other thing I started telling myself is I am healthy. I am a healthy person and I'm just like a really healthy person. And I almost made it as a joke at first. I'm just like really healthy, which is not something that I would ever say. I just never identified. I was like the person who, oh, I'll eat all the burritos and I'll like still be fine. And that was just like my identity that I kept on. So now my new identity is I'm just like healthy. I just really enjoy making healthy choices. It's just, I don't know. That's just who I am. And that identity shift was so crazy because I've tried to cut out wine in the past and then be like, it's not worth it. It's fine. I'll just do it. I'll just drink, whatever. It's not a big deal. Or like go to events, whatever. I'm telling you, I went from that to going to Christmas Eve, Christmas, New Year's, my birthday, and not even wanting to have a drink. Not even like, oh, yeah, there's like in my family, they always have like the best wine because they're wine drinkers and they like to splurge on really nice bottles of wine and do like wine tastings. And I was like, no, I'm just like not really, just doesn't really sound good to me, honestly. So it was just crazy that this shift in what I was telling myself and my everything internally actually shifted my habits and my cravings. It was wild. So, what I believe was that 1% shift in what I was telling myself every day and how I was identifying who I am. And I just started saying, like, I'm just like not much of a drinker, which I would have used to say. I used to be like, oh, yeah, I can drink and then it's no big deal. I can hang. So I'm just in my health era. And I hope that that helps anyone because obviously it doesn't have to be to drinking or it doesn't have to be for anything serious or whatever. But what you tell yourself can be that 1% progress shift that you make that literally feels like it's not doing anything. It feels like a joke until you realize that you have made a shift and it's not a joke and you're living that life. So that is my top biggest recommendation. Okay, tell us yours. Again, it doesn't have to be as airing your dirty laundry as I am, but why not? Okay, the other question was, what was your biggest takeaway from the book? I gave you lots of my takeaways, so I want you all to leave comments on what your biggest takeaways were so that everybody else can check them out. All right. Again, keep it going in the comments if you haven't finished the book yet and then you finish, even if it's like a month later, comment down below so that we can all keep in touch and all that good stuff. Anything else? Let's see. Don't forget, make your habits easy, exciting, little, incremental. And eventually they'll compound into whatever you want to achieve. Love that. All right, our next book that we're going to be reading, February's book is Essentialism by Greg McGowan. I secretly already read that this month because it came into my library and I have been dying to read it. And it is so freaking good. I have been quoting it and taking stuff from it all month. So I can't wait for you to read it. I can't wait to review it. We'll review it the last Tuesday of the month. So you've got a full month to dive into it. I can't wait. All right. Thank you all for being here, for subscribing, for joining this book club, for growing and bettering yourself with me. I love it. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.